The average time between the full moon is 29.5306 days, which is about 1 day less than the average calendar month. So this is why patterns on the calendar can slope upwards. If you're looking at a moon chart, you'll see that it's kind of like a wave, which is not a coincidence because the moon is associated with water, a wave. And water is associated with our emotions and the flow and the feminine. So see how it's kind of all tying together? This is why I love this stuff so much. The more I learn about it, the more I'm seeing, all right, there is like a pattern going on here. There is like somebody's got some big plan that we need to start deciphering like scientists. We're on like a mission to kind of figure it out. In today's busy world, how can we find the inspiration, knowledge, and energy to live a healthy and empowered life? If we balance and harmonize our mind, exercise our body, live according to the laws of nature, and connect to spirit, can we find a way to heal, become our authentic self, and live our purpose with love? I am your hostess, Amy Fournier, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. Welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. This show is about helping you to be healthy and fit in mind, body, and spirit, as well as harmonize your masculine and feminine energy, tap into your intuition, your true source of power, and awaken your authentic self. Today we're going to talk about the moon. We're not going to go too long, but I want to give you just a little bit of background on the moon because, well, it's kind of important, right? But it seems like the sun gets all the attention, doesn't it? Which of course is extremely important, but the moon is critical for the feminine energy in us and in the world for that matter, which is the reflective energy, because that's what the moon does. Did you know that the moon actually doesn't project its own light? It simply reflects the light of the sun. And as the moon is moving around through the different phases is why we can see more of it or less of it, depending on how much it's reflecting from the sun. And this is where the inherent value of the moon lies, because it seems like all that active force and the go, go, go and the bright, shiny energy, which we all love so much and is so important, gets all the props. But if we never take time in our lives to sit back and reflect and go within and connect with our hearts and our souls and our feelings and our intuition, these are all the feminine aspects of our being and of the planet for that matter. The moon brings the harmony to the world and the planet, so it's critical. And we can use that analogy to think of having balance in our lives, right? Are you pushing yourself too much? Do you not prioritize and value the rest, the reflection, the going within? And this is a critical lesson the moon will give us. So I'm going to refer to a couple things as we get into the show today. I'll be reading because I don't want to screw them up, and honestly I don't know it all by heart, so the idea is just to share the value with you. So here we go. The first little bit of info I'm going to share with you comes from astrology.co.uk. Okay, so this is really cool, and it gets into lunar lore, evidence, thoughts, theories, and folklore about the moon. The moon, our closest body in space. In a world where so much is determined by the power of the sun, it is easy to dismiss the more subtle impacts of the moon. Its influence on life on Earth comes under the realms of ancient systems of knowledge known as astrology. I have many episodes for you on astrology, like with Marilyn Dumont. I know 2 come to mind. Check those out if you're interested in that. So here's some evidence of the theories of the moon. In regards to nature, the link between the lunar cycle and the tides is well established. Strictly speaking, tidal moon is not directly caused by the gravitational pull of the moon, but by resonance, a pattern set in motion by the gravitational effect of the orbiting moon on the Earth over time. The correlation between frost and the full moon is high enough for futures traders to go long on coffee in anticipation of a full moon in Brazil's winter months. The harvest moon occurs in late summer, vertigo time of year in the northern hemisphere. it's the time when farmers took advantage of the additional hours of light to complete the harvest. Many animals, including mammals and fish, travel at the full moon. Migratory birds appear to follow the patterns of the moon for timing and finding their path of migration. Herbivores ovulate around the time of the moon. Deer rut around the Leo full moon. Marine biologists on the Barrier Reef claim that coral mates at the full moon. How cool, right? Studies by physicist H.S. Burr reveal that the full moon amplified the electrical charge in living cells. A velometer attached to a tree picked up a faint electrical force which soared up the scale at the full moon. As far as religious festivals, well, many religious and traditional festivals are scheduled in line with the lunar phases. For example, the Chinese New Year is celebrated on the second new moon after the winter solstice, and Easter Sunday is the first Sunday on or after the first full moon following the spring equinox. You see, I'll just add that all the ancient cultures were in sync with the harmony and the seasons and the cycles of nature. They ran their lives and the way their societies operated and the things that they did around responding to nature. For example, the moon was a big player in a lot of things that allowed them to live. For example, the harvest, and not to mention their social events. You can actually learn more about that whole thing with on one of my episodes with Maria Wheatley, episode 40. We talk a lot about the moon cycles and ancient cultures. For human behavior, well, everybody knows, like, the crazy comes out on the full moon, right? Well, it's actually backed by research. I mean, police logs will verify that this is actually true. A team at Basel University found that the sleep patterns of 33 subjects tested in a darkened room were affected by the lunar phase. At the full moon, subjects had less sleep and diminished melatonin. We also know that arson attacks increased by 100% at the time of the full moon. However, arson also rises when there's a drop in the atmospheric pressure, which may also be connected with the phases of the moon. According to a U.S. study, murders, many apparently motiveless, treble around the time of the full moon. Robert Louis Stevenson's book, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, was inspired by the true story of Charles Hyde. He committed a host of, quote, chilling deeds at the time of the full moon. As far as medicine, research at Leeds University into the effects of 12 full moons on 60 medical practices found consultations 6 days after the full moon were 3.6% higher than average, equivalent to 30,000 patients nationally per cycle. I mean, we could just go on and on with the studies and the research verifying that the moon is directly affecting us, whether we're aware of it or not. Doctors report an increase in epileptic seizures and bleeding ulcers at the time of the full moon. That's nuts. As far as psychology, the list is long. The association between the lunar phases and mental illness is legendary. The word lunatic actually comes from the Latin word luna, which means moon. In Britain, the 1824 Lunacy Act stated that people were liable to go mad when the moon was full. Research found a dramatic rise in admissions to psychiatric hospitals in New York at the full moon. Airline stewardesses reported more incidents and that passengers on flights are more difficult to handle at the full moon. And I'll add, if you have a pet, you might notice a difference too. So I will share that I have a really cool equinox moon phase calendar in my house. It's annual. I update it every year, obviously. And it's really cool because it shows me visually the phases of the moon for each night of the year. So I know exactly what this energy is putting out in my life. I can look right at my chart, my calendar, and I can see, oh yeah, we're on a waxing moon, we're on a waning moon. And do you know what those terms mean, by the way? The main phases that most of us know about the moon is the full, and then of course the dark moon or the new moon. But the moon goes through many, many phases, obviously, to get to those two extremes. The waxing moon is another primary phase, which is the phase of the moon as it's getting bigger. And the waning moon is the other primary phase of the moon. That's when the moon is getting smaller and moving toward the dark or the new moon. But did you know that a lot of people confuse dark moon and new moon? Did you know that they're actually two different things? Yes, I learned this from Dr. Christine Page, who's been on my show twice. And actually, there's an episode with her on the moon you might want to check out. It's one of the most popular episodes of Awakening Aphrodite, and that's episode 25. She is a brilliant medical doctor, and she's basically a metaphysical medical physician. She's got the whole package, everybody, and she knows everything about feminine cycles and archetypes and, you know, earth energies and astrology and holistic health and wellness. She's fantastic. But episode 25, she teaches us about the cycles of the moon, and you might want to check that out. She also taught me, as I'm sharing with you, that the dark moon is actually a 3-day cycle, and it's associated with, of course, our menstrual cycle, which I'll get into in a minute. But the new moon is actually only 1 day. It's the second day of the 3-day dark moon cycle. Did you know that? Super important. 3 is the number of the goddess. It's the creative energy in life. And I think it's very interesting that the dark moon is a 3-day cycle. And it's the time when we're supposed to go within and really pull back. Because the full moon is the time we're supposed to be out in the world and shining bright. And here I am, you know, but we need to balance that with the withdrawal, which is really hard to do in today's society because we're always supposed to be on, and it's hard to ever kind of pull back and not be exposed or having to respond to messages and this and that, right? And we feel like we always have to be perfect and shiny and bright. No. That goes against the laws of nature. I know it's hard to do. I had struggled with that too. But let me tell you something. I have many days where I don't go near a brush or makeup, and I even wear the same thing I wore yesterday. And, you know, I just kind of just tone it down, the whole thing down. Really minimize. I'm not on social media much, but even minimize it more. Don't look at my emails till maybe later in the day, whatever. I do as little as possible to engage in the world, and I really try to draw back as much as possible while not completely blowing off my responsibilities, and just go into myself and just let myself be, you know, not just worry about the external appearance, both psychologically or physically. I think this is an important thing for all of us to do. I will also add, did you know that there's something called an ingress? Like there's a lunar ingress and a solar ingress. And I didn't know this myself other than when I was really researching this to come on, to give this show to you. A lunar ingress occur when the moon moves from one zodiacal sign into the next, which is really cool. I mean, for that matter, did you know that in the lunar cycle, the moon always moves forward through the zodiac sign? It's so basically every 2 days, it's the moon is in a particular zodiac sign, one of the 12. Did you know that? I mean, let's just think about that for a second. The moon cycles through every zodiac sign every month for approximately 2 days. And that energy is affecting you. The energy of Cancer is different energy. You know, the crab is different energy than that of Aquarius. Is different from Pisces for sure, or Scorpio. And these things are affecting us subconsciously. And this is why I love learning more about the moon and bringing it to my conscious awareness, like with my wall chart showing me what phase we're in, because I can start understanding things better and respecting my body's needs and energy better, because everything that we're seeing with our physical eyes is not always the whole picture, right? I'm sure you know that by now, right? So there's also a solar ingress, and that's when the sun changes signs, like including the spring, autumn equinoxes and the summer, winter solstices. So that's something you're probably more familiar with those terms. But I wanted to point out that there's a lunar ingress, and that's when the moon goes from one zodiac sign to another, as it does. So the lunar cycle includes all 12 signs in one tropical month. So it's an average of just a little less than 28 days. Do you want to know exactly how many? I got that for you. 27.3216 days. So a little less than 28 days. Oh, and this is really cool too. There's a difference between the calendar and the lunar month. I bet you know that, right? Or I've wondered, because not every not every month is exactly the same number of days. Well, the average time between the full moon is 29.5306 days, which is called a synodic month, which is about 1 day less than the average calendar month. Okay? Because that's, average calendar is obviously about 30 days. So this is why patterns on the calendar can slope upwards. If you're looking at a moon chart, you'll see that it's kind of like a wave, which is not a coincidence because the moon is associated with water, a wave. And water is associated with our emotions and the flow and the feminine. So see how it's kind of all tying together? This is why I love this stuff so much. The more I learn about it, the more I'm seeing, all right, there is like a pattern going on here. There is like somebody's got some big plan that we need to start deciphering like scientists. We're on like a mission to kind of figure it out. And it's so cool to see the connections between everything, don't you think? Hey, cutting in here for a moment to share with you, I've got my buddy Ross Newkirk here from Conscious Technologies. And everybody's looking to raise their vibration. How can I just have better mojo, be in more harmony, more flow? I love that Ross has created so many products that I use personally to help me raise my vibration and even harmonize my vibration. So Ross, the Core Harmonizer is one of the key technological products that you guys have designed to help us raise our vibration. Can you just tell us what makes it unique? How, in fact, does it raise our vibration so effectively?
Well, it uses frequencies of light and music and sacred nested geometries to create a coherent field. And when someone's in that field or environment, you're able to access higher levels of awareness and access information that when you are disconnected, you don't have access to. So as we raise our frequency and vibration, we're actually able to access a new toolbox, if you will, that has the tools to help us navigate life more easily, such as answers to so-called problems that we may have. You can actually find those answers when you enter into higher levels of awareness and consciousness, because that's where the solutions to these so-called problems exist. So it's a wonderful piece of technology to help people raise their vibration.
And it's so easy because, guys, all you have to do is plug it in. They do all the hard work for you. They put it together and they send it to your house. You plug it in. I got mine playing right now. I use it 24/7. I love it. My pets love it. The birds outside love it. My plants love it. Ross, how can they find a Core Harmonizer of their own and get a special discount?
Yeah, they can actually go to your website, amyforner.com, and just enter FitAmyTV10 to get 10% off. So you're probably aware that I have been taught about the oracle and the value of using the tarot, which is basically the hero's journey or the heroine's journey. It's the soul path of our lives to help us understand and connect with our subconscious as well as the divine. And all ancient cultures had used it. It's nothing to do with devil worship. It's nothing to do with religion. It's just been completely maligned by the religious powers that be, like so many things were, like, i.e. witch burnings and all that stuff. But I found it to be a very powerful tool that one of my mentors, Paul Chek, taught me to work with to really establish the connection with my soul. It was one of the many things that he taught me to do. And it's one of the things that I kind of kept. And the tarot is basically like the road of life. It's to help you to figure out like what's going on in the different phases in your life, not to mention events that like particularly.
But the one thing I want to share with you about the tarot is the tarot, in the tarot, the moon is one of the major arcana. Okay, so there's 21 of them, which is considered like a major card. Okay, the moon is 18, and it's card number 18. And the moon, like I mentioned, is symbolic of our subconscious, the feminine, the moon, and it can also be your fears and phobias, because it's about, again, your subconscious going within to really what's under the surface, like the hidden, right? The sun is out there bright and obvious. The moon is the dark, the hidden, the feminine, just as important. Nothing bad about it. It's just what maybe you don't know, right? Your subconscious. So it can also be the home of fears and phobias, okay? So in the tarot, it mentions it's time to face your fears and phobias, and it's also a warning to stay on the path. There's one of the most popular tarot books called Tarot, A Universal Language, that's by Beatrix Quintana. Talks about how, well, in all tarot, it's about symbology, right? All symbols is about, connection to the universal language that we might not be aware of. All symbols connect with our subconscious. I did an episode on that too with Fatima Zahara, which you might want to listen to, on symbology. You know what? I also did an episode with her on understanding the masculine and feminine nature of the sun and moon. So that's one you probably definitely want to check out, by the way, which is episode 95. So I'm referring to all these episodes because if you clicked on and are listening or watching the show on Awakening Aphrodite podcast on YouTube, you probably are interested in the moon, right? So I just want to give you other resources to dive deeper. Okay, because we're really just scratching the surface here. But in Beatrix's book, she talks about, again, the symbology. The moon represents reflection, femininity, intuition, cycles, light in the dark. And do you know what an eclipse is, by the way? I mean, actually, so the eclipse is the light, which is the sun, is in back of the moon. And when eclipse happens, it's basically showing us that enlightenment happens after we have faced ourselves in the dark. Okay, so when you see an eclipse, the symbols are they're not literal, right? That's symbology means they're figurative, and it's a way the subconscious communicates. So like, let's say if I'm painting and I draw a moon, and then I said, you know what, I'm going to make it an eclipse. I don't know why, but I'm going to make it an eclipse. Well, that can be because my subconscious wants me to remember, perhaps, that for something I'm struggling with, that enlightenment, for me to figure it out and get that moment, right, of yes, comes after I have faced myself in the dark and gone within and really been honest with myself about how I'm feeling and what's happening. And an eclipse can symbolize hidden information and mystery, which leads to the light. Okay? So again, the inherent value of the moon, I mean, come on. You gotta go within and get honest and truthful. Okay, and the last thing I want to share with you about the moon, because we know the moon is directly and has always been associated with the feminine cycles, as well as the tides and all that stuff, right? So I'm going to read for you a section that's a nice synopsis of the connection between the moon and your menstrual cycle. And this applies, by the way, even if you're not menstruating anymore. If you've gone through perimenopause or menopause, you still have a cycle. And did you know that it affects every part of your body? Of course. Okay, so it doesn't matter what phase of your cycle you're in. The energy of your cycle and what's happening, if you're pre-ovulation, ovulation, post, whatever, it's all affecting you all the time, as is the moon, okay? I'm going to read this section that's a nice synopsis of this idea from Lisa Lesser's book, Love Your Lady Landscape, okay? So this is a great book, by the way. But she shares that, many indigenous cultures and tribes had the word for moon and menstruation interchangeable. It was basically the same word they used. Imagine that, when you refer to the moon and you say menstruation. That's because most societies have, at one time or another, understood the link between a woman's menstrual cycle and the moon. It was just like, duh, like obvious, like this is what's happening, and we all have heard of the red tents and women menstruating together in cycle, or this sometimes happens in dormitories with colleges, right? What's that all about? Like, come on, woo, right? It's kind of spooky, but it's happening. So I just think it's cool to understand, like, why is that happening, and to be empowered by it. So as women in the world, we know we're ruled by the moon, aware of it or not. Like I said, it's the primary symbol for feminine energy. So it makes total sense that you want to chart the lunar cycle to understand not only your menstrual cycle, but also your emotional cycle, I will add, as well as your physical, your energy level. So Lisa shares the waxing moon, like I mentioned, is getting larger in the sky. It's moving from the new moon towards the full moon. This is the time to start new projects. Okay, so as the moon is growing, it's getting bigger. This is like, all right, I'm working on this thing. I'm started a garden, I'm planting. For me, it might be writing a new blog post or whatever. It's you start new projects and you're working on them. It's when you're going to meet new people. It's like your life is getting bigger. You're growing. You're out there. You're making it happen. You conceptualize new ideas, and it's also the time when you can attract love during the waxing moon. Okay, because you're getting brighter. Your energy's growing. You're taking that action. So the waxing phase usually lasts about 14 days. The waxing phase of the moon is also the stage of your menstrual cycle where you're pre-ovulating. Okay, which is right before you are basically fertile. Then we have the full moon. Okay, so when the moon is full, she forms a perfect silvery spear of gorgeousness in the sky. This is a time for getting it on, baby. You'll feel super frisky, but just know your fertility will be heightened too. Be prepared. It's a powerful time to manifest and bring dreams into being. So we got to remember that your ovulatory period of your life is when you're on. It's like you just got that mojo in full effect. It's like, yeah, baby, here I am. You're attracting what you want to you, like bees to honey, So it doesn't have to do with your love life necessarily. It can, but it's more about your energy, your connection to the cosmos of like, yeah. I'll share with you too. I love when I get to schedule a guest around the time of the full moon. And for me, I was born right before the full moon, about 48 hours before a full moon. So from my soul and my chemistry, my biology, I was actually formed during that time of the lunar cycle. By the way, it might be good for you to find out where was the moon in the lunar cycle when you were born. You probably know your astrological sign, right? So it's a similar energy to that, because it when that little zygote was impregnated and you became an actual being, was boom, that moment that was just very significant as to where the planet and the astronomy was at that moment in time. Very powerful. So there's a lot to it. And again, check out my episodes with Marilyn Dumont for more on astrology. It's just very powerful stuff. Okay, but also when you learn what phase the moon was when you were born, is how you can then schedule events in your life to correlate with it more. Like I said, when I'm doing something in the world that's kind of out there and it has to do with around the time of the full moon. And for example, I was going to go to a conference, and I looked at my moon calendar, and sure enough, it was during the dark moon. It was during the new moon. That is the time when it would be best for me, if possible, to pull back, withdraw, not be out there, not having a podcast, not being where I'm meeting new people at some big out there exposed event. So I thought twice about going. You'll have to make your own decision what you think about that and if that's even possible. But it's something to consider, and it's kind of fun, Okay, then we have the waning moon. The waning moon is decreasing in size, moving from the full moon toward the new moon. It's the perfect time to break bad habits and addictions.
to end unhealthy relationships, and to really tap deep into your intuition. Okay, so this is where, like I said, the moon is getting smaller. Okay, so during the waning moon, the period of the menstrual cycle is pre-menstruation. So that's right before your period. Okay, and then we have the new moon / dark moon, because again, they often go together. This is when the moon is directly between the earth and the sun, and therefore it's hidden. This is a great time for planning new beginnings and new undertakings, while having a little cave time, quote unquote, to read, watch papers, and pamper your sweet self. Okay, so this is a very, very powerful time, I will add, and like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, very under-respected and appreciated and valued and practiced, that going within time. But if you start doing that, just take, like, even if it's just 48 hours, or at least the day of the new moon, to just not push yourself, not do the hard workout that day, not force yourself to do stuff you really don't want to do, start that hard project or whatever, and really try to pay attention to your body more than you normally do, and really listen to it this time. Like when you are really tired, just do let yourself just, that can wait till tomorrow. I'm going to take at least one day a month where I rest and I go within and I don't push myself. If you start doing that, watch what happens. Promise you're going to be glad. And the world will still be there the world will still be there the next day. Okay, you don't have to worry. It won't fall apart in one day of you being off the schedule. Okay. So we know that our periods are highly affected by the moon's movement. The blood and hormonal cycle follows the ebb and flow of the moon. From new moon to full moon, as the cycle waxes, wanes, estrogen levels and progesterone change. Estrogen levels increase during a supercharged fertility when the new moon is at the fullest and roundest and most abundant. And then from full moon to new moon, the waning half of the cycle, progesterone dominates and leads to the blood of the dark moon. So I just want to say as a last point, the dark moon, again, that period of 3 days where you're supposed to go within and not be bright and shiny and pushing yourself out there, is when women will bleed. And if you have gone through menopause and you're not physically bleeding, you can still symbolically, this is something I learned from Dr. Christine Page, again, you can symbolically bleed into the earth if you want, or just take a cup of water and say an intention in it and pour out that gift to the earth and it's a releasing time, that which you don't need. Okay, so the flow is what's important, not necessarily the color or the form, like being red blood. It can be just water. So if you've gone through menopause, you can do that practice as to symbolically show the universe you're releasing and you're flowing out, which is the same idea as your period. Okay? So to wrap this up, your menstrual cycle really is extraordinary, and it's an amazing self-care tool, as well as, I will add, self-knowledge tool, that if you chart it, you can really get to know it better and get to know yourself better, build a relationship with your needs, which is so critical. Build a relationship with your needs. How about that for a concept? I love that. So I hope you found this episode helpful. It was really fun to put it together and bring it with you. I hope you learned something. And do check out those episodes I mentioned, like the ones on astrology with Marilyn Dumont. Also episode 25 with Dr. Christine Page on the moon. Episode 40 with Maria Wheatley. We talk about the moon. Episode 95 with Fatima Zahra. We talk about the moon. So it's a big part of my show because it's the feminine, right? And this Awakening Aphrodite, well, you know what that is, right? So I enjoyed being with you today. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to support me, the best way to do so is to subscribe and to share the show with a friend. It's so easy. Mention it. Send it from your phone in a text. It's easy to do if you have an iPhone. And you can also check out all my favorite stuff that I use every day with discount coupons. That helps support me too. I get a very small commission for some of those. That is on my website, amyfournier.com under the e-store, the recommended products. And I love being with you. Thank you so much. If you want to leave a review, that would be amazing. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye. Would you like to support my mission to help empower people all over the world to be all of who they truly are? If so, please subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes, and share it with a friend. And if you're looking to take immediate action to align your energy and optimize your health, visit amyfournier.com. Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite. Let's awaken her together in you. I'm your hostess, Amy Fournier, and I already can't wait to be with you again and for you to hear what I have planned for the next show.
Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. To learn more about Amy, check out her website, amyfournier.com. That's amyfournier.com. You can also check out Amy's live and on-demand virtual fitness and yoga classes, and sign up for her newsletter to receive a free mini ebook of 3 of her top tips for making holistic health a lifestyle. Again, that's amyfournier.com, and get your ebook sent to your email immediately. Connect with Amy on the daily on Instagram at FitAmyTV, FITAMYTV, and watch many of the podcast episodes and subtopic clips on her YouTube channel, which is also FitAmyTV. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.